June 12th. You are my portion, Lord. I have promised to obey your words. I have sought your face with all my heart. Be gracious to me according to your promise. Psalm 119, 57 and 58. It was the fulfillment of centuries of waiting on God's promise made first to Abraham that he would settle his people in their own land. Now, under Joshua, after living in tents, oppressed in slavery, and wandering in the wilderness, the land was being allocated to the people of Israel. Every tribe was given its inheritance in the promised land, this land of milk and honey, land that would be further allocated to every clan and every family. But there was one exception. The tribe of Levi, the priestly class, received no land as their inheritance, for God had said through Moses that he himself would be their inheritance or their portion. David, of course, would have had the ancestral property that was his portion in Bethlehem. Furthermore, as king, he had vast riches of land and possessions. And yet, in this verse, he echoes what God said of the Levites and declares it for himself, that the Lord is his portion, his inheritance. Barnes writes with regard to David's statement, God was to David what other people seek in wealth, honor, pleasure, fame. To him, God was all and in all. He asked nothing else. This desire of David's for God alone is manifested in how he treats God's word. In this stanza of Psalm 119 alone, David determines to obey God's words, turn his steps to God's statutes, hasten to obey God's commands, not forget God's law, give thanks for God's righteous laws, and befriend all who follow God's precepts. And this desire is manifested most of all by seeking God's face with all his heart. There is a desperation with which David seeks God's presence, to the extent that he is physically weak with longing. Truly, David desired nothing else and sought nothing else than God alone, and he recognized God's word as a key element in achieving his goal. Today's decree: You are my portion, O Lord. I seek your face with all my heart.